Hey, we got some breaking news. U.S. Supreme Court a moment ago now just ruling that Virginia will be allowed to resume its purge of voter registrations. Remember, the governor said that there were some 1,600 who were admitted non-citizens. David Spunt's live with that in D.C. What's the word, David? Hello.
Well, this is significant, and this is a controversial issue in Virginia. And while it's dealing with only 1,600 voters or so, it's something that could have national implications as we are now less than a week away. So Governor Glenn Youngkin signed an executive order back in August. The Department of Justice sued Youngkin, saying that he can't toy with executive orders and taking people off voter rolls within 90 days of an election. It violates federal law. Governor Youngkin says that some 1,600 people did not present their citizenship status. They are non-citizens of the United States, and they should not be able to vote. The Justice Department said some of them did not properly fill out a DMV form. They skipped over a box, or some became citizens later, resulting in actual U.S. citizens being removed from the rolls in error. So the Supreme Court ruling on that today. These are the states right now where legal challenges currently exist. Many are battleground states. In North Carolina, a federal appeals court ruled the state Republican Party's effort to question some 225,000 ballots must stay in federal court, not move to state court. That's a temporary win for Democrats there. In Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court expected to rule about provisional ballots there. Now, while the justices are busy, the court did cross off one case, or if you will, two cases yesterday. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s name will remain on the ballot in Michigan and Wisconsin, though he wanted it taken off after endorsing former President Trump. Even though he's no longer a candidate, people can still vote for him in those cases. The High Court also involved in several pre-election cases. Both campaigns have said they've recruited Bill and Dana thousands of lawyers across the country, some on a volunteer basis for pre- and post-election fights. One concern, getting the pace of the results in. In many states, if you cast a ballot early, it can be counted early, but not in 6 states, including the swing state of Pennsylvania, where everyone's watching. Officials there cannot even open the ballots until Election Day, so the results may not be known in Pennsylvania for days. State officials in Pennsylvania say nothing nefarious about that. Back to you.
So we'll try and make all that clear as mud come election night for our viewers watching at home, too. Thank you, David. Nice to see you.
For more on this, Andy McCarthy is a former assistant U.S. attorney and a Fox News contributor. I turn over the floor to you to talk about this breaking news from the Supreme Court.
Well, I think it's the only result that really makes sense. What Virginia was trying to do was take people off the ballot who are not voters because they're not Americans, and that's by their own admission. And this idea that this could prevent or mistakenly result in American citizens from Virginia not being able to vote is bogus, because under Virginia law, let's say they've taken you off the ballot mistakenly. Under Virginia law, if you show up to vote on Election Day and you attest that you are an American citizen, they have to let you vote. So there wasn't a chance that an actual American citizen was going to be prevented from voting here. On the other hand, it is a federal crime for aliens both to represent themselves as American citizens in order to register to vote, and it's a federal crime for them to cast votes. So Virginia's law promotes election integrity in Virginia. It supports federal law, and it doesn't result in Americans being proscribed from voting.
Andy, I agree with everything you just said. However, every legal analyst, including yourself, often says the courts want to stay away from elections the closer we get to them. And I was of the understanding that this court was just like that. And now we get this ruling, which I think might come to as a bit of a surprise. Am I wrong on that?
Well, here's the thing, Bill. Courts want to stay out of a lot of things that they're thrust into, but they're in the problem-solving business, and there's lots of problems that are very hard. I think with elections, the thing with courts is they don't want to be perceived as deciding the election. So if you bring the court a dispute before the election takes place and before the election's been announced, you can frame that as something that is just fixing the rules under which we're going to proceed. I think the real problem comes after the election, when the result, at least presumptively, is known, and what you're asking the court to do is potentially reverse what it seems like the voters have decided. That's a position they never want to be in. We're much more likely to get decent decisions out of them in the run-up to the election, I think, than post facto.
Got it.
Okay, Andy, let's go to Pennsylvania now. The Republicans are asking the Supreme Court to block the counting of some provisional ballots in Pennsylvania. Let me read from the Wall Street Journal Ed Board. This is the second presidential election in a row that Pennsylvania's mail vote messes have drawn in the U.S. Supreme Court at the last minute. The state's laws need an overhaul. It was weird reading this last night because I felt like, didn't I read this 4 years ago? Why is this still a problem?
Well, they haven't been forced to fix it. I think, we had a chance, Dana, with the Moore case before the Supreme Court last time around, where they could really have rendered a clear decision that would have set up clear guidelines for what the states have to do, and then you would have expected the states to be able to fix it. The thing is, I thought the court's decision was kind of ambiguous, so they don't really come out and say that the state legislature makes the rules and the courts and executive officials are not at liberty to change those rules in the run-up. And since they clearly didn't clearly say that, there's still a lot of ambiguity about who's allowed to do what in the run-up to the election. So we need clearer rules. The states obviously got to do a better job, but they could be pushed to do a better job.
Yeah, Andy, last question. Do you believe we are headed for some sort of legal collision next week? Or do you believe that depends on how close the race is and in which states?
I think historically, Bill, while there's been a lot of noise around these disputes, if you take the ballots that are actually impacted by these different categories of controversy and you set them aside, it's very, very rare that you have anything close to something that will be big enough to close the margin in an election. And I know we expect a very, very tight election, but I'd be surprised if something like, they didn't put the ballot in the envelope that's supposed to go inside the envelope. I'd be kind of surprised if stuff like that turned out to be so numerous and so expansive that it could change the result of an election.
Okay.
All right, Andy McCarthy, we're going to have you on the speed dial.
Right on. We're going to ride you shotgun for some time. Thank you, Andy, very much.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.